We're going to get started. Thanks everybody for joining me. At least for those of you in Canada, you'll be particularly probably chuffed to look forward to a trip to the warm uh, islands of the archipelago of Cape Verde, given what I understand is the weather back home. So anyway, we won't talk any more about that, but we're going to get started. So today, I'm going to introduce your host. That's easy. That's me. And then I'm going to tell you what you need to know about your trip in terms of getting ready, packing, all this kind of stuff, and what will happen when you arrive on the island of Sal. And I'll touch on a few notes in the itinerary. I'm not going to dive into it in any great detail because you have the itinerary. There may be changes. There certainly will be changes because, of course, we're traveling by boat. It's always subject to weather and sea conditions. So it'll be an adventure. And then finally, I'll answer any questions that you have. If you do have questions at any point during the webinar, please type them into either the chat box or the Q&A box that you find. And if you don't see it, just scroll up and down with your mouse. You'll see it at the top at the bottom of the screen. And as I say, I'll get to those at the latest at the end. So I think most of you know me. And if you don't, I look forward to getting to know you when we arrive in Cape Verde. So I'm Gordon. I'm obviously the founder. I should say obviously, in case you don't know me. I recognize 3 out of 4 names. Yolanda, I'm not sure we've had the pleasure of meeting before, and if we have, I apologize because I sometimes forget. Uh, uh, so yes, I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor, and this was my great idea to go to Cape Verde. In fact, I've actually landed there once on a flight um, from back in the day, Washington, D.C. to South Africa. At the time, the planes couldn't quite make it on one tank of gas, so we had to stop in Cape Verde. So I've landed there before, but that's the extent of my visit to Cape Verde. But I've worked with variety. And anyway, I'll get into that in a minute. But I'm going to be your host, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys because this is the most favorite thing that I like to do. And I wish I could do more hosting and less of all the other stuff that I have to do. But anyway, lots of stories to be told on board the vessel. So let's get right into the pre-trip preparation. And obviously, first and most important, as always, the passport, money, tickets, passport. But money is plastic and tickets are electronic. So if you have your passport, you're in pretty good shape. I would say passport and phone. I can go anywhere in the world with a passport and a phone. I don't need anything else. Um, but so make sure your passport is as normal, valid for at least 6 months beyond the entry date. You've probably checked all this already. And that there's a couple of blank pages in there. And take a copy of it with your phone, or make a photocopy, because I always have a spare copy of the passport elsewhere because, for me, you can imagine, right? My passport is like, where is it? It's going in the safe. And then as long as I remember to clear the safe at the end, it'll be going on from there. And any other documents that are useful and handy that would be good to remember. Prescriptions, some of the obvious things, but we were talking about this the other day with some of the other hosts. If you think about if I was going away for 6 months, what information would I want to have with me? And then you sort of start to think about, do I have all my contacts in my phone? Do I have my alarm code if somebody I all those things, because even though you may only be away from home for a couple of weeks, but it's halfway in. It's that one thing where you're like the Gmail password. So give it some thought, and frequent travelers kind of know what they need, and you'll be fine. There is a little entry requirement for Cape Verde, so there is a little something that you need to do, and you could do it anytime, and ideally you do it now. I have not done mine yet, so this is a reminder for me as well. You have to fill in the electronic travel authorization, which they have the acronym EASE, to be able to get into Cape Verde. All this information that I'm talking about is in the documents that they sent in the trip specific reference guide. You'll have the link to the website. It's ease.gov.cv. I can type it in here if you'd like. But for your travel authorization, it's common in most countries. It costs about 3,000 500 Cape Verdean escudos, which is about 50 bucks Canadian. And there is also a pre-registration form that you need to fill in, which takes about 20 minutes, is what I'm informed. I haven't done it yet, so it's probably, as I say, it's a reminder for me to do it as well. So do that. I'll check in with you about a week beforehand at the latest in the Telegram group to see if you've done that. Not that I'm micromanaging you, but I just want to gives me some it calms my anxiety when I know that everybody's ready to go. Let's talk about packing for a minute. So packing smart is always important, particularly for a trip like this. First of all, try to travel light, not for my benefit, but for yours. I'm hoping not to carry your suitcase. Oh, somebody raised their hand or something. I see I heard a ding, which I don't know what that means. The Sorry, as I was saying, try to travel light. It's casual, right? We're on a boat. There's, going to be 20 odd other people, 20, 25 other people on the boat. Okay. If you can't hear me, raise your hand or something like that. There's something going on with my computer. The speakers have changed. I have no idea. Uh, so travel as light as you can, and uh, be casual. I mean, obviously the temperatures are going to be warm, so we can expect highs in the day in the mid 20s, and a bit cooler at night. The weather should actually be perfect for this trip. Certainly a lot better than in Canada, but not. It shouldn't be super hot. I don't think it'll get into the 30s. Famous last words. But because it's in the middle of the Atlantic, you get these cool breezes that are coming over, but hence cool breezes. So you're going to want some summer wear, some shorts, some t-shirts, some blouses, and so on, a sundress, that kind of thing. But the evenings and when you're out on the sea, right? We forget that the Atlantic can be cool, the water, and therefore the breezes can be quite cool. So you want to definitely have a windbreaker. Um, um, Rain, I was going to say, is unlikely. This is a climate that is going to be pretty dry, but it might rain. But I wouldn't bring stuff for rain. We'll dodge the raindrops if we have to, and comfortable walking shoes. So, you've read the itinerary. We've got visiting these little towns and we're going up into the mountains and all the rest of it. This isn't a walking heavy trip. I mean, there are some opportunities for that, and there's obviously some excursions that you could book that are a little bit more adventurous. So, judge your own capabilities, what it is that you want to do. Personally, I heard now another noise. So strange. I'm hearing noises in the background that I'm not sure what they're from. Anyway, I apologize. I have a pair of cloud, whatever sort of quasi hiking shoes, with treads on them. That's all I'm going to bring. I think that'll be plenty for most. You don't need hiking boots or anything like that. Flip-flops for sure. Water shoes is something I'm going to bring because I think I'm not sure. There's definitely some sandy beaches, but I'm never always too sure unless I know the beach. It's like, what's in there? And is there anything else lurking around in the water, sea urchins or something like that? So I kind of like my water shoes until I get a feel for the water. I think that's handy. Do bring a day pack if you've got one, a light one. And that way, when we go out on these excursions, you can bring your sunscreen and your hat and your water bottle and all the stuff that you think you might need. So that's handy. Don't forget swimwear. That goes without saying. We are definitely going to visit some beaches here and there. Um, and yeah, I think breathable clothing like linen, if you're up for it, or light cottons, wicking material. Again, being out on an excursion all day, you're going to get a bit sweaty. This kind of thing. Pretty straightforward stuff. So yeah, I think that's all I need to say about that. Oh, the electricity. So the plug. Is type C plug. So that's the same, I believe, as the European plug. It's in your document. There's a picture of it. I get the types all mixed up sometimes when I just read the thing, but it is 230 volts. So you're going to need the adapter, and most of your appliances are going to work on that voltage because they are dual voltage anyway. So your phone and your camera chargers and stuff shouldn't be an issue. That being said, if you do have a hearing aid charger, sometimes those are only single voltage, as in North American voltage, or appliances with heating. For those kind of things, first of all, ask yourself if you really need to take it. given, where we're going, and, nobody's going to see if your, hair's curled or not. I mean, and again, I should say that with all due respect. I respect one's need to have some certain amenities. So, decide what you need, and check the voltage for stuff like that. Apart from that, yeah, do keep in mind that there's no laundry available on board the ship. So for the week we're there, we got to make do with what we've got. I'm sure you can do laundry in Praia when we get back to the hotel after the cruise. But by that time, we've only got a couple nights, and then it's heading back on from there. So this is one of those trips where it's like, yeah, maybe you need everything to last you for the whole trip, depending on where you're going, sort of from here. And I think that pretty much covers the basics on what to pack. Uh, of course, stuff like binoculars is always useful. I wouldn't say that this is a wildlife tour per se. This is scenery, this is culture. So again, make a judgment call. I'm not going to bring binoculars for this trip, but depending, you can see out at sea. You can, if you're a birder, you can see some amazing seabirds pretty much anywhere in the Atlantic. So let's talk about money for a second. As I said before, the local currency is the Cape Verdean escudo. That's one you won't have in your wallet, and don't even think about asking for it in a bank in Canada. They'll look at you sideways because they won't know where Cape Verde is. So my rule of thumb, not just in Cape Verde, but anywhere, is don't bother with local cash in advance. Just take a credit card with you. They're accepted all over the place. There are ATMs in Praia. Once we get on the ship, though, different story. And so some of these smaller places are still definitely cash oriented. So to that end, um, it's a bit of a guessing game, because if you were to ask me how many escudos should I bring, I'm going to say I don't really know. Prices are not superly expensive there, depending on what it is that you're buying. Um, Grocery stores and so on will likely take credit cards if you need to buy something more, sunscreen or who knows what it is. So use your credit or debit card from home. We'll get a bunch of cash. Between you and me and the fence post, I will have a larger amount of cash on me because I have expenses to pay during the trip, tips and the like. So what I do, don't tell anyone this. I do sometimes lend money to members. If rather than being like having tons of extra cash in your pocket at the end, because what are you going to use Cape Verdean escudos for after this trip? Um, we have an arrangement. Let's just put it that way. So we'll talk about that when we get there, but don't do anything beforehand. But do get a Wise card. I highly, highly recommend a Wise card instead of your credit cards from home, quite honestly, because the exchange rate is way, way better. Every time I look at my Visa statement, I'm like, you're charging me what for the euro? Like it's absurd. So sorry, but the Wise card is the fairest exchange rate you can get at a retail level anywhere. And I do check these things from time to time because I think the banks get enough of our hard-earned money. So a Wise card allows you to put Canadian dollars in. You can carry a balance, and you can pay with a whole bunch of currencies. Cape Verdean Escudos is not one that you can hold on an account on the card. It's not a typically common one, but you don't need to. If you got dollars on there, you're still going to get the best rate possible. And the first $300 that you withdraw Canadian is free of charges from Wise. After that, it's a fairly small fee. And the ATM fee, you can't. But, I don't even know if you'll need to take 300 Canadian dollars worth of escudos. So just as a orientation point, one of the things that you might need cash for is gratuities, but of course, all the gratuities for the services that we provide are covered. Your drivers, your guides, any of the restaurants that we dine at. There's gratuities that are there that you prepaid and are inside the price. The only thing that isn't is your airport transfer driver. So the person that brings you from the airport in Sal down to the town of Palmyra, and for housekeeping, because we're not there to, tip for those services. So if you'd like to leave those kinds of tips, obviously cash is better. They do take US dollars. So I didn't mention this on the previous slide. Um, US dollars are somewhat accepted. I wouldn't say they love them. Uh, I'll try not to make any US derogatory marks at the moment because it's not about them. But the point is that uh, if you do have US dollars, and I wouldn't go and get them for this trip, you'd be better off to use your ATM and get the local cash. But if you've got some lying around from having been in the US, bring them along. Can't hurt. Uh, I'm going to have some US dollars with me as well because, yeah, I always just like to have a little bit of the world's reserve currency in my pocket. Tipping there, otherwise, if you're dining out in a nicer restaurant, around 10% is customary, but sometimes they put the service charge in. A lot of more and more hotels and restaurants do that. They'll have that service charge right at the bottom, in which case the tip will not be required. But cafes and pubs, you don't need to tip in that environment. Uh, I'll move on and talk about mobile communications for a moment. Um, so let's look at this objectively for this trip. In terms of, so first of all, I do recommend to bring your phone. In fact, we are moving to saying on most trips that bring your mobile phone is mandatory because it makes our job to ensure that you have a great experience so much better. And so it's still highly, highly recommended on this trip, or maybe not mandatory. The only reason I say not mandatory is because given that we are on the ship, and we're doing a lot of things together as a group. It's I'm going to be seeing you at dinner every night on the boat, and I will tell you what's going on the next day, and so and we may or may not have mobile reception when we're at sea. So the usual telegram messages that we send out, I may not be sending out because I'm just going to tell you at dinner what's going on the next day. However, that being said, I still suggest you bring your phone and you consider getting a SIM card. It's handy upon arrival. Although if you're going to get a local SIM card, like a physical SIM that you see here, you wouldn't get that until you get there. Um, but you can always log on to the Wi-Fi at the airport. But by getting a SIM card, then for the first day that we spend in Palmera, and not to mention the days at the end, as well as even being in port, because there will be cell service at the ports that we call at by the different islands. Um, if we go to a far-flung corner of the island, there might not be cell service again. But the point of it is that if you decide, for example, this little example of how this would be handy, you're not going on the excursion. Other members are going on the excursion, and you get lost in town and you're like, oh my God, where's the ship? Whatever's going on, you want to get a hold of me. If you don't have a SIM card, that's going to make your life difficult. So I would, that's the reason, those kind of scenarios that you'd be like, oh my God, I wish I had a SIM card. So get a SIM card. You, of course, can also get an eSIM, which is the digital equivalent of this plastic thing here. There are hundreds of providers. I cannot tell you which one is the best in Cape Verde. I've read a few forums. I don't believe any of it in the sense that it's hit and miss, which is why we don't recommend eSIMs, only because we haven't tested them in all the places that they exist. So we just don't know. And it's kind of all over the map. A lot of our hosts use Airolo, AIROLO, which does work fairly reliably everywhere. I use one called Saily, SAILY. It so far hasn't let me down, except for deepest, darkest Africa, and the middle of India. But anyway, it has let me down a couple times. But um, and there's various other ones. So you might just do a ChatGPT search, which is the best eSIM card for Cape Verde, and see what it comes up with. I said enough about that. Telegram, please do download it. We will not use it. I'll be honest with you. We'll not use it as much as we do on most trips, given what I just said with being on the ship and being together at dinner and all the rest of it. However, again, going back to that previous example, you're on land somewhere, you want to get a hold of me, you'll be very happy that you had Telegram. So download it on your phone, set it up, send me a message now if you haven't already, and some of you have already said hello. We'll make sure you're in the channel, which is it's like a group but chat, but you can't reply, and that's where I'm going to send messages. Generally, when we're on land, less so when we're at sea, to say what's going on the next day, to send you a copy of the daily, and so on and so forth. There's also the group chat, of course, but when we're at sea going from island to island, it's unlikely that it's going to work. So I'll just manage your expectations as far as that's concerned. There is Wi-Fi on board at a fee, but the Wi-Fi is, I was about to say the Wi-Fi is based on the mobile network, which is the traditional way of doing things. I am not sure. They may, in the meantime, have equipped them with Starlink, but don't quote me on that. So I would not count on having Wi-Fi while we are at sea. So it's a chance to get away. Let's talk about health protocols. I'm eating up a lot of time here. First of all, if you feel unwell at any time, if you develop any symptoms, before, during the cruise, or during the whole program, like sneezing, like coughing, please, please, please wear a mask. Bring a mask. We can probably buy them there, but it's just better you just have one in your handbag, in your carry-on, just in case. It makes people feel a whole lot better. And I've hosted some trips recently where people were sort of trying to hide that they had a sniffle and like everything's fine, and next thing you know, three people have it, and it's nobody's fault. But listen, let's not be that person. Let's try to contain the spread of the common cold and other things by wearing a mask. It is your fellow members. If you're not the one that has a sneeze or a cough, you'll be grateful that the other person put a mask on. One other point is if you should have an injury at any time during the trip, you need to let me know. Even if it's something you think is minor, I want you to tell me about it. Just because we should make a objective decision as to whether any sort of anything requires medical attention, even if it's just a look at by a clinic in a town somewhere that we stop at, because we just, particularly the more further you get in the tropics, you get a scrape or something like that. And I'm always like, the chances of infection are higher and all that stuff. And we're going into water, and maybe it's too many things that are unpredictable in these environments. And so I'm a little bit overly cautious. So if you injure yourself in any way, please let me know. And please don't smoke in the confines of the group. There, the some of the crew of this ship will almost invariably smoke, just to let you know. So there'll be a spot on the boat somewhere at the back where one can have a cigarette. But around the rest of our group members during our excursions, please no smoking. And then we fast forward to our arrival into the beautiful island of Sal. It does look like this. Um, I've heard from people that have been here before that the beaches are just beautiful, the color of the water, fascinating. So you're going to arrive in, maybe you're arriving in early, but of course our start date of our trip is the 24th. We will, for those of you arriving on day one, obviously you'll have a transfer included. You'll get through customs and immigration, and you'll meet the driver. They'll have a sign with your name in the arrival hall, just like the common protocol is for any other trip. If you don't see it, log on to the airport Wi-Fi. I assume there is some. I've not been there. I cannot guarantee there is one, but I haven't been to an airport yet that doesn't have Wi-Fi. And then send me a message. I won't be far away. I'm arriving one day, I think one day before. I think I'm arriving on the 23rd. So I'll be there one day before. If you're arriving in earlier, then obviously you will have had to make your own transfer arrangements because I'm not there to coordinate. So backtracking from there, if you have a delay with your flight, if you're not on the flight that you're arriving from, I imagine, I haven't looked at the flight manifest yet. I imagine most are coming from Lisbon to Palmyra. So if your flight from, let's say, Toronto to Lisbon is delayed uh, and you miss the connection flight, I know some of you are overnighting in Lisbon, given the weird flight times and so on and so forth. I know I'm overnighting in Lisbon. Um, so that means there's a bit of a buffer in terms of flight delays. But still, the point is, if you're not on the flight that you're scheduled to be on, arriving into Sal is when you need to please let me know, just because I can then coordinate a new pickup time with the driver for you. So that's really, really important. Um, da, 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 da. Okay, yeah, quick rundown of our trip. Obviously, we're starting over here on the island of Sal. The islands are quite spread out. So we're going to be covering some open seas. So that's actually something else for the packing list I forgot to mention. Um, it, this is a relatively stable ship, but the Atlantic Ocean is a big ocean. So, there is going to be at least some movement and maybe more than some, movement on the ship. So prepare yourself accordingly. If you need to take some medication, some Gravol or whatever it is that your physician recommends you take for motion sickness, don't forget to pack that. Or if you can get the bands, the patches, I think are no longer available in Canada, or maybe they are. I hear varying comments about that. But if you suffer from motion sickness, please do put that in. So after our overnight here on the island, we're going to be leaving by ship and visiting all these beautiful islands: Boa Vista, Santiago with the volcano, and Fogo, Sao Felipe, the long trip up here to Sao Vicente and Santo Altao, and then of course the trip back at the end. We're going to see some amazing stuff along the way. The itinerary goes, the landscape goes from being very stark and dry and like almost moon-like, kind of like you see here. The island of Sal is like dunes, from what I've been told. Rocky, raw coastlines, quite beautiful. Our ship, of course, the Harmony V. I was last on her about a year ago in her home port of Athens. She sails in West Africa and the Cape Verde at this time of the year, and then she repositions, I believe, back into the Mediterranean during the summer months. Um, she is a Oh, I'm not going to go into it too much more. I thought I had another picture of her. She's a modestly sized yacht. There's some lovely lounging areas at the aft, a little bit up at the front, and back here. And the cabins are cozy. The food, my experience on these ships, I've worked with Variety for a long time, is generally pretty good. We have a buffet breakfast and lunch, and typically is served dinner. And it's a small ship. As I say, I think there's a total of about 40 people on board. So we're almost a third of the passengers on board the ship. So we get to dominate everybody. There'll be folks from other parts of Europe. Who knows, maybe even some Americans on board. I'm not sure. And yeah, we're going to have a grand time sailing around and seeing all these fun places and going on these excursions. We will be visiting places like Santiago Island. You see here a picture with this beautiful beach. We're not always parked right at a beach area just because we have to park at a port for the most part. So obviously, to the extent that we don't already have it included in the itinerary, I'm always going to make sure with the purser that there's an opportunity, if there is a beach nearby like this one. Who wouldn't want to swim here? And so for us to be able to go and experience some of those things. We'll drive around Pico de Fogo. These are volcanic islands, much like the Azores or Madeira, and so the landscape should be amazing. So, this is a trip that if you're a photographer, that you might want to bring something more than just your mobile phone. And these cute little colorful villages. The juxtaposition between sort of the Portuguese influence, because it was a Portuguese colony, and the African influence, and a little bit of Latin American influence. It's quite interesting, and I'm very curious to see the kind of things that we're going to experience as we go around all these villages and look at this landscape back in here. I mean, I think the pictures are going to be absolutely incredible. So I think I've covered. Oh, look at that. We're just under 30 minutes. So, oh, one more thing to remember, please. Do make sure that you have a luggage tag on your suitcase, preferably like a hefty one, not just the airline paper ones, because they tend to fall off easily, uh, just so that we don't have so many movements here. I mean, obviously, you're checking into the hotel pretty much on your own when you arrive, and then from the hotel onto the transfer to the ship. But I'm monitoring luggage always from now and again, and so I just want to make sure that I can identify your luggage, and having your tag on it would be very, very helpful. Um, yeah. Any questions? Oh, yeah. Here's a question. Airolo. So Susan says Airolo has Cabo Verde coverage. So there you go. So uh, great. So a recommendation from Susan. Airolo, can't vouch for if it really works there, but they've been pretty reliable. Will there be wet landings? I would say no, but maybe. So I would bring water shoes just in case. So how I typically prepare for these, we have these Zodiac type boats that will typically land at piers because we're visiting towns. In a number of cases, we're going to be docked actually at the pier. So in fact, I'm trying to think. Again, given that this is the first time that I've done this trip. We may not have many like Zodiac landings, and even then, they may still be dry. I still would be ready to have a wet landing, i.e., water shoes or shoes that you're willing to get wet that you can then quickly change. So have that possibility, but that's going to be the exception rather than the norm. The ship have cabin have towels, absolutely. Yeah, the ship has all the amenities that you would find in a hotel room, so there's no worries about that. That being said, with soap and shampoo, personally, I bring my own. Maybe I'm a little bit picky. I like my, organic whatever stuff. So I don't use the stuff that they provide in hotels. So that's just my personal thing. But the stuff is provided, so no, not to worry about that. Great questions, by the way. Thank you for that. Any other questions? I haven't seen any questions from Richard, but Richard's been everywhere, so I think he doesn't have any questions. Um, yeah, good. All right. If you think of a question 5 minutes from now or 5 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now we'll be there already. But so anytime between now and the trip, please, you're welcome to telegram me. I should have the answer. I don't have all the answers. People think I have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. So, but if I don't have the answer, I will certainly find out the answer. Similarly, you can also send a message to Melody, or if you've recently been in touch with Paula or Aura, any of my team will be happy to make sure you get your question answered. And yeah, I'm obviously keen that you are ready for this trip and have everything that you need. That's my first and foremost priority. And on that note, given that I haven't seen any more questions, I'm really excited about this trip for us. You guys are going to be going to a part of the world that not many people have. This will undoubtedly be a country check mark for probably everybody, myself included. Um, and not to mention just a very interesting landscape. So look forward to seeing you in a month's time. And I've got to go and take some members around Oman between now and then. And so I'll be looking forward very much to getting back into the sea, although we do have some sea in Oman as well. So thanks for joining me. And I'll be sending you a replay of the webinar in the next 24 hours. Take care and stay warm in the meantime in Canada. Ciao.